got everything you need?
Sir.
Check. Wallet, watch,
Oh!
Kool-Aid,
Jean jacket, check.
chain,
Ice, check.
New York Yankees hat.
Check. Dude, it's funny how often people ask me, hey, big Yankees fan? Never
No,
watched a game in
never.
my entire life.
Don't even know who they are.
Never watched.
Just here for the hat.
I have never watched a single game.
Soccer shoes on.
Yep.
Yep.
Big soccer player.
Are you? That's indoor soccer particularly. That's great.
Crushed it in
Yeah.
3rd grade.
Well, it doesn't surprise me in the least. Hey, man, it's really good to be back with you.
I know, finally.
We took the month of October unintentionally off,
Unintentionally.
but I think you were pretty busy.
Dude, I just go through a couple week spans about 3 or 4 times a year where
Yeah.
finals hit. The church is going on. I'm preaching.
Right.
Something's going on with events or something at church all at the same time. And
Yeah.
it just murders my brain. The thought of sitting down and having to process any kind of thinking, you know what I mean?
Too much.
Yes.
I can understand why when you're already in a stressful season, sitting down with me would be something to avoid.
Oh, dude, that's just, it just
Yeah.
adds to my stress.
It's too much.
I don't want to have an anxiety attack.
You're like, this guy is going to be just poking at me, and I don't need that in my life right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, I understand.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's good to see you, though.
You too, brother.
When you consider shoes, like, how do you go about selecting shoes?
Personal preference.
Okay, but like what?
Well, I feel like our huge fan base needs to know that I collect shoes. I'm kind of a
What does that mean that you collect shoes?
sneakerhead.
Okay, but like, do you have like? Because there's no shoe decorations here, so where does your shoe collection reside?
So I actually see. This is where it's going to get weird.
Okay, good. That's what I'm excited
So
about.
I've
Weird.
always been into fashion.
Yeah,
Okay, and clothing.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before.
That's all.
You've made fun of me.
as all
Many
cisgender males
times.
are. Yeah.
But I've loved shoes since I was a little kid. And
I don't think I ever make fun of you. I think I just poke a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't think I ever straight up rib you for
yeah,
being in the
I
fashion.
mean, I built a theological argument around why I'm doing. Anyway,
yeah, if
So-
anything, I'm just a little bit envious.
whatever. No, so I have a shoe rack that I've built in my bedroom
Oh, you built
because
it.
my
That's cool.
closet
Not big enough.
ran out of space.
Understandable.
And so I have I took big 2x12s and stained them and I mounted them to my wall. So I kind of have a display of my shoes.
How many shoes are we talking here?
That
Ballpark.
doesn't matter.
Just ballpark.
So for a while I was actually flipping them. Yeah, so I had some software. I had some bots, they're called.
Okay.
So I would bot Shopify and I would bot different Nike when they would have a hot drop. So basically what that means is I'm trying to buy 20 at a time
Okay.
because I know the shoe, once you buy it, it goes for triple, quadruple the amount you buy it for. So you turn around and sell it on eBay, you turn around and sell it on StockX. So I was doing that for a while.
Just for fun?
For fun and to make some extra side money at home because a lot of times I'm sitting there writing sermons or working on things and
Yeah.
that's something you can just do passively while you're sitting there.
Right.
But like I knew it would, did it for a while, made a little bit of money, but it became too much work.
Sure.
Shipping and boxes. And I'm like,
Right.
okay, I don't have time for all this. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I just it just dwindled off. But I don't buy a lot of shoes now.
Okay.
When a pair drops on Nike or Kith or some other site that I watch.
What's Kif? This doesn't even sound like a word.
So Kith is a fashion brand
Okay.
that basically will collaborate with Adidas, with Nike, with different clothing companies, and they will make their own version of a shoe.
What would be an example of this? Is this like the Lil Nas X Devil shoes with the blood in them?
No, that was just a Nike drop.
Oh, okay.
But no, they'll whatever. They could drop a Nike Dunk, but it's the Kith version of the Nike Dunk. So they will take it, make their own colors, their own materials. They'll put Kith on the side. They'll collaborate with Nike. It'll drop on their site only.
Oh,
Yep. And usually the shoes go, once you get them on Kith, they go for a lot more than you buy them for.
wow.
So I'll pay attention to like special hot drops and stuff,
Right.
but I don't do it a ton now. I probably buy one pair of shoes every couple months or something.
Huh. What's your favorite pair of shoes?
Oh, my favorite pair I have right now?
Yes.
Oh, man. Probably my Jordan Low, Year of the Dragons.
Yeah.
They're green with like a metallic red, and they're super rare. They've got like kind of crocodile-looking skin on the back.
Can you even wear them?
I do wear them.
You do wear them?
Yeah, they actually look worn.
Is that Is that okay with you?
I'm the type of shoe guy that I don't buy shoes that are going to just sit there.
Okay.
No interest.
Your shoes are meant to be worn.
I'm going to wear them.
I respect that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to look at a pair of shoes. That's not fun or cool.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the part everyone needed to
Yeah.
hear to feel a little bit better about this conversation.
Yes.
By everybody, I just mean me.
Yeah.
That's what I needed to hear. And so, does it make it hard to pick out shoes in the morning?
No. So you're really going to make me look bad today. I love it. Let's keep going.
This is just my curiosity.
Anybody
I'm just
that
inquisitive.
knows me, right? And not you know me, but you don't know this side of me.
I mean, I don't
enjoy
I don't
it.
hang out with you in the morning when you're picking out clothes. So this part, I don't feel.
I enjoy picking out outfits.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I like putting combos together, and
Right.
you never know how it's going to end up. Sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, typically start with a shirt, pants, shoes to kind of accent whatever color I'm going
Yes.
with.
Yeah. But is it hard? Like, do you?
I don't find it hard.
No, it's easy.
No.
Yeah.
A lot of practice.
And did you get this from your mom or your dad?
So definitely my mom. I mean, not my dad. Growing up, mom always wanted me to look put together, presentable. Hair was done. She'd sit there working, get my hair right. You know what I mean? My sister and I always looked put together.
Yeah.
We were church kids. We went to church 3 times a week.
Right.
Always had nice clothes
Not
on.
ragamuffins.
And I just took a love to it early. Or begged mom and dad for shoes. When Tommy Hilfiger was big, I wanted all the stuff. And
Yeah.
just grabbed a hold of it really early.
Was there ever a pair of shoes that you wanted that you couldn't get?
Oh yeah, mom and dad by no means were super wealthy growing up.
Sure.
I mean, I come from a middle class family. So yeah, there were plenty of shoes I didn't.
There's a lot of people saying that these days.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's great.
So yeah, plenty
Okay. Plenty of shoes. Any that stand out in your mind?
that I didn't have.
Yeah, just like, that's too bad.
Gosh, that's tough. I don't know that I remember. I mean, there were obviously some pumps that I've always wanted that I never got. I did have one pair, I remember. Geez, that's tough. I'm not sure I could list any right now.
Do you remember when Reebok came out with those shoes that had the basketball on the tongue that you could pump up?
Yeah, I think that might have been what I had.
And then they came out with the next version that came out with cartridges that you could put on there, and instead of pumping it, you could just hit the pump, and it put air into it.
Away, like CO2 cartridges on the side.
Yeah. There's like a little adapter thing, and so you plug it into the shoe.
I do vaguely actually remember that.
I'm pretty sure it was Shaquille O'Neal's shoes.
Yeah,
that had those, but I think
those were the ones.
we could bring those back.
You need to bring those back, dude. That sounds like something you would just rock.
I did when I was a kid. Yeah, I had a
Yeah.
pair of those, and it was pretty easy to go through those CO2 containers.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome.
because as a kid, that's the whole reason why you have them, right?
Yeah,
And my parents were not interested in providing a constant supply of those CO2.
Yep.
So, but you could
Get
still like manually pump them up.
we need them.
Yeah. So you told me that Rock Church went back to one service
A while ago.
a while ago.
Yeah, it was months ago.
Months.
Yep. So I think it was actually
Where have I been?
pre-summer
Okay.
because summer's typically slower.
Oh,
We decided, hey, let's most of the churches in our church family network do that. They go back to one in the summer. So we're like, let's do that. And man, we went back and our elders and our people were just like,
What have we been doing with this
yeah,
two
this is
service?
us. This is kind of who we are.
Yeah. What's the difference? Because for me, again, I didn't grow up in the church. So coming into a church, the church I came into was a 2-service church.
Yeah.
So
Same.
that's kind of what I always knew was 2 services.
Yeah.
And why I preach at a lot of 1-service churches, it's just been, it's like normative for me. So I don't really understand what would be the difference in feeling going from 1 service to 2 service back to 1 service. That's kind of intriguing to me.
So I think it creates 2 churches.
You do?
Yeah.
And when you say 2 churches, what do you mean by that?
So, I mean, the gathering is a big deal. Obviously, we know scripturally. And I think that when you come in on Sundays, not seeing your people, sometimes for the first time in a week, for most people, for the first time, we have our kingdom communities, but that's a smaller group of people.
Right.
When you have people coming at 2 different times, you're just missing out on that gathering. And the energy difference was substantial. And I don't want to say that was the only reason, but there was something that felt like it was lacking the whole time.
Yeah.
And obviously I did more reading on it and more research on it. And there are people pushing against the whole model now because, again, it does create 2 churches in a sense.
Right. Yeah.
So And I kind of went, when I went to 2 services, I'm completely honest, I went against what I always said was my ministry philosophy from the early. I always said, we're going to get to 250 or 300 people and we're going to plant another church. Just because I'm passionate about not creating a consumeristic church. That's the mega church model, slip in, slip out in the back door. But a church where all the members are actively engaged, involved, doing their part, coming to serve, not just be served. And we're kind of at that point. So Rock Church is moving towards planting our second location now. That's kind of all in the works, looking for a building actively. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So does that energize you? Does that make you feel like, oh, it's another thing to do? Like, how are you processing that?
With my business background, it does exhaust me a little bit thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I'm really trying to do it in a way that it does not rest on my shoulders.
Sure.
That other men are going to be, you know what I mean, largely take control.
Responsible for the...
Yeah. I think healthy things multiply, and I want it to truly multiply, not just be like another satellite location that Josiah preaches at. That will exhaust me.
Right.
So we've been blessed by God that we have a lot of men. You know, we have 5 elders now. We have 4 in elder track.
Right.
That'll give us 9 elders at the end of the next year. And there's some blessed men of God, and I think that God's given us what we need to do that.
In your network, what's the support that comes with church planting?
Yeah, so there has been, our network leader has offered, there will be some financial support.
Yeah.
Obviously, elder training, ministry training. There's quite a bit of support there.
Yeah.
So that's a blessing.
What's your reason for not just increasing the size of your current facility to handle another 200 people?
Because again, I think once you break over that, and this is a subjective number, it's not a biblical number, but I can already feel it now. Once you get over that 300 mark, you hit 500, 600 people. You create a culture, an environment on Sundays where it's easy to slip in, it's easy to slip out.
Okay.
And that's really not what we're after. I'm after making disciples.
Yeah.
And so I want to know when people aren't here.
Right.
I want people to be recognized when they're not here.
Right.
And I think 250 to 300 is that number.
Okay. And what makes you so can I push back a little bit?
Yeah.
So I think what makes you confident that 250 to 300 is a number, just from the standpoint that it seems like you're already in a medium-sized church range.
Yeah.
That you probably could scale a couple more 100 people and still stay in the same feel, that the feel wouldn't change until you went over 600.
I'd be hard to believe that just because I feel like I've already felt a change in feeling.
Okay.
For the first time I can say as being a lead pastor, I show up on Sunday and I'm finding out from other people that so-and-so is at church. That's never happened before.
Okay.
There are people coming every Sunday and I don't know 20 people's names.
Right.
That's never happened. It used to be, there were 3 new people that came on Sunday and here were their names and here's how they found us and here's, you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Now, obviously there's solutions to that in scaling any business. More people, more leaders, but again, the feeling has already changed.
Right.
And you tell me that adding 200, you don't feel any, I don't believe that. I think 500 people at a church coming, that's a mega church. I know a mega is a tip. I know they say it's 1,000, but to me, it's a mega church.
Yeah, I think megas now is like over 1,200. I think you got to be like at 6 to 8 to be even a large church. So,
well, not statistically. If you're over 100 people, you're in the top 5% in the world.
Yeah, I think anything over 100, you go from small to something else. But I think in terms of looking at dynamics, that you have these categories of dynamics that are pretty consistent across the board. So, so where do you want to plant that?
We're really leaving that open to God. We're waiting for him to kind of drop something on us.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're looking all the time. We have not found anything yet. The only prerequisite criteria is that it's far enough away.
Okay. What do you think that needs to be?
West Davenport, Bettendorf, LeClaire, Eldridge. The only thing I'm not at peace with, and this could change, is Illinois.
Okay.
Just don't feel called for a couple of reasons. Logistically, how we're going to plant, how we're going to do it structurally in the beginning.
Yeah.
I will probably be involved in the beginning, preaching at both locations and whatnot, so that'll be difficult if it's in Illinois.
Yeah, I think that historically in the Quad Cities, when churches multiplied, they multiplied on the same side. And I think it hasn't been until the last 20 to 30 years that the thought process has changed to have a plant on each side of the river. Mm-hmm. But I would say that there's some outliers that have done it well, but for the most part, planting on the same side has worked better. So I think there's some wisdom in that. Yeah,
but again, we're open to what God kind of puts in our lap,
I think because there's a mall on the Iowa side, there's a mall on the Illinois side, there's an Applebee's on the Iowa side, there's an Applebee's on the Illinois side. Yep. So why not have a church on the Iowa side and the Illinois side?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, because there's some ease to having it all in the same state.
Yep.
Even from structurally how you do it and distance and all that.
So,
yeah. What has you excited about today's election? Did you vote?
I did vote.
Yeah, good.
I voted.
Thanks for doing your civil duty.
Right? I'm excited because, it's obviously the suspense of the election campaign season has been, it's always fun to watch, exhausting to watch. I love it. It's a love-hate relationship for me.
It just keeps getting weirder.
It does.
Like, I did not think 2024 would be somehow more bizarre than 2020.
Yeah.
And I did not think 2020 would be more strange than 2016. So.
Yes.
I just remember elections being normal for a while.
Yeah.
And then it's just been
There's
crazy.
only one thing that'll shock me tonight.
One thing?
Or whenever we find out tomorrow.
Okay.
One thing that'll shock me.
I want one. Yeah, tell me what that one thing is that's going to shock you.
The only thing that shocks me is if Kamala wins by a large margin.
That would be a shock.
That would be
a shock. Landslide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If she wins, it wouldn't shock me. If Trump wins by a landslide, it wouldn't shock me. The only thing that shocks me is if she wins by a landslide.
So what do you think happens? What's
my prediction?
Yeah, what's your prediction?
So there's a podcast. It's what's it called? It's a girl. She's a liberal. She had Kamala on recently for an hour-long episode, which was pretty rare to get Kamala on anything. It's a very popular right now. I wish I could remember the name, but anyway, the views on that podcast, right? A liberal podcast.
Yeah.
Right. Probably one of the most popular ones right now. 775,000 people watch that video.
Okay.
You go to Rogan.
Yeah.
You look at Trump's video.
Yeah.
It's 45 million views.
Yeah.
J.D. Vance, the last I looked, 15 million views.
Yeah.
Elon Musk yesterday, you look, 3+ million views.
Yeah.
I don't understand it because it seems like the traction from anything that I can read as a layperson outside of no polling. I can't poll anyone. All I have is my observations of what's going on. But it seems like there's so much more momentum on the Trump side.
Yeah.
I don't know if you feel that way.
Well, did you hear that Kamala was in talks to be on Rogan?
Yes. I heard the whole thing from Joe.
Yeah.
Basically breaking down what happened. She wanted him to come.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, which I thought Joe's, I thought Rogan, this is low fruit. You got to come to my studio.
Yeah.
And we got to have a conversation. That's a real conversation.
Yeah.
Because that's my show. And
she wanted other people in the room, less than an hour.
Yep.
You come to me.
Yep.
I'm like, Trump just sat down and talked for an hour, dude.
3 hours.
3 hours, I mean.
3 hours.
3 hours, just talked.
Yeah. Right.
And I think in Elon's podcast yesterday, he talked about it, and he said, hour 2 and 3 is when stuff gets weird. Like, she needs to be in there in hour 2 and 3.
Yep.
And
Vance took her spot that they had held for.
Weird Vance.
Yeah.
Who is the most normal guy that we've had as a politician in the last.
Right. Yeah. Gosh. I think for me, Vance is probably the most exciting piece of this whole thing, where if there's momentum he can have to be a serious option in 2028.
Yeah, I agree.
Out of, the whole thing. Did you see the Madison Square Garden shindig that Trump had?
Yeah, with all the controversial.
I mean, yeah, I guess it's controversial.
The racist comedian and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's Tony Hinchcliffe, who, if you've ever watched anything that comes out of Kill Tony,
it's comedian.
It's
dirty.
It's all in the same vein. Like and it's like, well, it's a comedian. Like he's
supposed to be
right. He was intentionally doing that.
Yeah.
And if you look at the people who are on Kill Tony and the comedians who are on there, like it's pretty hard to be that this guy's actually a racist. So,
Yeah.
But if you just want to like extrapolate what he says without context, then
it's
he's a racist.
exhausting.
But did you look at the full lineup?
I don't think I didn't look.
All right, so you got Tony Hinchcliffe, so kill Tony. You got Trump, obviously. You got J.D. Vance. You've got Kennedy. You got Tulsi Gabbard. You got Elon Musk. You've got Dr. Phil. You've got Hulk Hogan. What is this?
Yeah.
Like if somebody would have been like in 2008, if somebody would have been like in the year 2024, Dr. Phil, Hulk Hogan, Elon Musk, and Robert Kennedy are all going to be on the platform.
Well, who we didn't have was Cardi B, dude, because she slated at the Democratic rally. I don't know if you saw that or not.
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't see that?
But I can imagine.
Her teleprompter broke.
Oh, so then it all went haywire.
Oh, it was. I felt bad. Honestly, I felt bad for her. Completely didn't know what to do.
Froze, yeah.
Oh yeah, it was rough.
So, anyways, it's a wild group of people.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson had a great YouTube video calling it Trump's X-Men. And so he's breaking down his interview experience and the personality styles. And Ramaswamy was there too, which is a very interesting personality. And so he's breaking down all these personalities and what he saw as like the benefits or cons kind of to each person, which I thought was an interesting take.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really get into the whole, big names. Like, what's funny? Why do we care so much about what celebrities think about politics? Like, this is not their area of expertise, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's why I think this group is a little bit different, right? Because it's like Kennedy is lifelong Democrat.
Yep.
Tulsi Gabbard.
Well, and that's the other thing that I've noticed.
Yeah.
Again, observationally.
Right.
I've never seen so many long-term Democrats switching over to the Republican Party.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
So again, the only thing that's going to shock me tomorrow is if Kamala wins by a lot.
Yeah. Right. So I don't know, man. I think I was fully prepared for Hillary to win in 2016. I remember waking up at like 2 a.m. and checking my phone just to see where I was at, and I was like, it's a pretty red map,
right?
Yeah. That's pretty shocking. Yeah. And then 2020, it was just like, man, Trump has done a lot to hurt his brand. You know, I mean,
the guy does it a lot to hurt his brand all the time.
Right.
I mean, that's
But this is, clearing out the rioters so that way you could take a picture in front of the Presbyterian church with the Bible upside down, not good.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody could have stepped in and helped that. So, political theology.
Oh, yeah. How to think about this as a Christian?
Yeah.
Politics as a Christian.
Right.
This is something I wrestle with all the time.
Yeah.
And I think as a pastor, what I wrestle with is how engaged do I get?
Yeah.
Right. Because how engaged should our people be?
Right.
How much of cultural issues do we talk about on Sundays? Because it seems like you have two strands of people in your church, people that don't care at all and people that completely obsess about it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there's not a lot of middle ground.
Right. So you're trying to, it does matter because people matter.
Right.
But building what I've been trying to do, and I'm not there yet, it's kind of an open-handed issue for me a little bit.
Okay.
In terms of labeling my political theology, whether that be R2K or, you know what I mean, some kind of, I don't know, I'm not there.
Yeah.
I can't label it. But the one question that always, and I've kind of brought this up before our podcast, but that I ask people, like if you don't want God's laws in government,
right,
and if you don't want Christian leadership in government, what kind of leadership and what kind of laws do you want in government?
Okay. So what does that question imply?
What do you mean? What does it imply?
Right. So I think when
you have to answer with something.
Right.
You can't say, oh, I want a politically neutral man in office that has politically neutral laws, right?
Right.
That aren't Christian laws, that aren't like where you see what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah. So I think this is I'm trying to think about how this question is framed in your mind. So I think a good question would be maybe before that is what's the role of government in the world?
Great.
Right?
Yep.
So because I think we presume government to be a man-made creation,
Right.
and I'm not sure that is inherently true.
No, I think the role of the government biblically is to restrain evil.
Yes, so
Yep.
we'd agree on that,
Yep.
right? And so then from there, what
You have to define those terms then.
what needs to be embraced in order to restrain evil in the world?
Right. Number one is you have to define what good and evil are.
Exactly.
Right. So if you don't want a Christian leader, what kind of leader are you looking for?
Right. And I think that who was the Mormon candidate back in
I'm not sure.
2008, was it?
Not a big fan of cult leaders leading the country, though.
No, I know. This was this was a big thing that happened, because John F. Kennedy was the first Catholic president, and that was a big deal. Like there was a lot of uproar.
Just because Protestant country.
Well, no, because how do you if a Catholic has to obey the Pope?
Oh, I see.
And the United States president is a Catholic.
Yeah.
Who's actually running the country? So that was kind of like the whole conversation. And Biden is technically only the second Catholic president we've had.
Yeah. Well, I thought Obama was a Catholic. Is he not?
No, he grew up going to like a Protestant church, yeah.
So what's your point with the Mormon guy?
Oh, well, I think that, I wouldn't consider a Mormon a Christian, but I think a Mormon, in terms of the morality piece, that there would be...
There's some overlap. But what is ideal? If you're honest, you want a Christian leader in the country.
I think that my experience with Christians has been is that we also have to define that term, right?
100%.
Because there's plenty of people who slap that label of Christian on without the morality to back it up.
Right.
And so I think that's where the person who has the ability to uphold the Constitution and the Bill of Rights as it was intended becomes a stronger candidate than just slapping the label of Christian on there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That would, that would be my
But
case.
give me your version of your ideal candidate.
Right. So, yeah. So
what would their fundamental beliefs be, and how would they define good and evil? I mean, the Constitution? That would be the authoritative...
Well, I think as a country, that's why we have that document, right? So that way we're not subjugated to the individual whims of any person.
Yep.
And so I think you can, if you imagine a reality at which, like a Christian nationalist who wanted to enact capital punishment on anybody who was a false prophet, that would be more problematic to me than somebody who was moral, seeking to uphold the Constitution for our style of government. Yeah.
Gosh, we can go down a rabbit trail here.
I know, right? Yeah.
Well, because the problem is, I mean, ideas have consequences.
So, yeah, of course. Yeah. Right.
Right.
Positive and negative. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you have a heretic, like let's bring ourselves back to 1500, right? Because we know some of this stuff happened.
Yeah. Right.
And you have a heretic, because their thinking was a little bit more in depth than people probably realize.
Yeah.
When you have a heretic that's contradicting scripture or whatever,
right,
they knew that would lead somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? That atrocious acts of evil would come out of believing incorrectly about morality and goodness in society.
Right.
And so it was a serious offense.
Right.
And so I'm not saying, obviously, let's go behead people that are heretics.
Well, it's the line of what heresy do you put up with and don't put up with, right?
Right. But I also don't like, it sounds like to me that you're coming with, we can't come up with some kind of orthodox system that kind of catches a lot of the major traditional faiths. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's never been done.
Right. But I think that if we're honest, though, you and I would prefer someone that holds to the Nicene Creed or the Apostles' Creed, and they were conservative theologically and were consistent with the Western Church over the last 2,000 years.
Sure, yeah,
That's who we're looking for as a candidate.
Right, but I'm also not looking for him to do the work of the church through the United States government either.
Well, restraining evil is the work of government given by God. We've already established that.
Right, yeah. So, but I think that's where I want to inflate the two into one, right? Where
you don't want to, or you do want to?
I do not want to. Yeah, I want.
And that's where I don't, and this is where that tension is, and I'm always reading about it, and it's open-handed. Yeah. I don't really know.
Yeah.
I don't know how you get away from it, logically. I think that they do overlap.
I think they influence one another, but I think anytime. Okay, so when's the first time this happens?
What?
On a wide scale.
Like a Christian nationalist type?
Yeah, right.
The first time? I mean, are you going to say Constantinople, or what are you going to say?
Well, technically,
Theodophilus or whatever?
I mean, Armenia would be the first Christian nation, right? So Armenia has the first step.
What year was that in? What century?
It was before Rome, so it would have been either super early 4th century or late 3rd century.
Okay, so it was before Rome.
Yeah, it was before Rome. Yeah, Armenia was the first Christian country.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And then obviously the big influential one would be Rome.
Right. Yeah, and then I think people confuse Constantine, who legalized Christianity, with making it the official religion of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, it was actually Theodophilus or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So that happened later in the 4th century, yep. And I think that's actually where it became more problematic.
Yeah.
Because then there was political incentive to be religious.
See, even that I think you have to be careful with. Because the narrative we've been sold is that like Constantinople and Theodophilus it was like some kind of evil when Christianity, but it really led the way for Christianity to be able to spread like it did. If they didn't, dude, the massive persecution, it was almost stamped out.
Well, that's where I think Constantine legalizing it was good.
Yep.
I think making it the official religion of the empire created all sorts of theological conundrums. I think that's the difference.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think the mistake there would be being a Christian nation, in my mind, doesn't mean, hey, everyone's now a Christian. But you are going to adhere to the 10 Commandments, right? Or biblical law, which is basically the foundational moral document of our country, whether people want to admit it or not. It's what the Constitution is built around.
Right. So I think...
Like, we are a Christian nation, whether people want to claim it or not.
But we're not a theocracy, right?
Right.
Right. So I think that's where people get muddied.
Because it is muddy. It's gray. It is not a black and white issue. Because in a sense, we dabble in theocracy, right?
Well, and I think we also ignore what the founders were. The founders were trying to create a document that was not going to result in what had come before.
Right.
And trying to avoid a feudal system.
Right.
So, I mean, again, greatest document ever created from a human perspective, I would say. And, not perfect in terms of there's not every issue we face was anticipated, but most of the issues had been wrestled, through that lens.
I think a lot of the problem comes down to how you define Christian nationalism. And there's been a ton of attempts in books to do this over the last 5 years.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I love the fact that it's even a conversation again, because it had, so Christian nationalism largely grows out of a postmillennial theology, and which was very much in vogue in the 1800s into the 1900s. And then World War I and World War II happened, and that pretty much stomped out postmillennialism until the last 10, 15 years. And then it's kind of started to come back again. But everything looked like, we could take the world into a place where everything's going to be better. Yeah. And we're going to create the kingdom through conversion, and the world's going to experience what we read about the millennium. Like we're going to create that. And then World War I and World War II happens, and we see more people being killed at a faster rate than has ever happened in the world, and everybody went, "Oh, maybe that's not it." So, and that's where amillennial and premillennial became the two predominant viewpoints. So, but we're entering into this time period where postmillennialism is gaining traction again.
Yeah.
So, thus reinvigorating the Christian nationalism.
I just think what's spurred it on is just, I mean, if you were in Iran right now and you lived in Iran and you're an Iranian, you call America a Christian nation, right? Like that's your perception. We are Christian. That's why they hate us, right? Now, as we get more secular,
I think they hate us because we're infidels. I think
that's based on Christianity, not American.
Well, I think you're ignoring how many other people Iranians hate, but in terms of not
Jews,
Iranians,
Christians,
yeah, right. So I think.
Listen, I've done so much Quran and Islam study in the last year that I want to vomit.
Oh, really?
And I can promise you they hate us because we're Christians. So my point is, like, we're experiencing now a huge shift in our country, just since we were kids.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons this has been brought back to life is because people don't like where our country's going.
Sure.
It's trending in the wrong direction.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, we've tried this whole, like, let's be neutral. Let's just hold the Constitution thing. And the argument is you don't have someone in there with deep moral convictions or Christian convictions. It's inevitable you go one way or the other. It's not going to remain neutral.
Well, you have to have morality, right? And you have to have a worldview that supports that it is the responsibility of the individual to do the most good possible.
But again, you have to define terms. I mean,
right.
Because the Democratic Party right now, their definition of good on many regards is significantly different than mine are.
Well, this is the intolerance of tolerance, right? That's where philosophically it's complete nihilism on the left.
Yeah.
So,
but again, that's why it's funny to say, oh, I'm fine if they're not a Christian in there. They just need to hold the Constitution. They would say that they are. You know what I mean? And it's not working.
Do you think they said? I think that the left is, at least the progressive left, has been very open about wanting to change the Constitution. And
the first one, free speech, is the one that they've brought up.
Yeah.
Because they said it's a hindrance to hate speech or whatever it is.
Right.
Right.
I think this is something where I don't think people realize why the First Amendment is the First Amendment, is that free speech is the ability to have free thought. The moment you don't have free speech, you don't have the ability to think freely.
Right.
And I think that's...
Or learn freely, or, differing ideas, or...
Right, I mean...
It's a protection against corruption, too. It's protection against tyranny. I mean, if you never hear another idea, you just go with the flow and the cultural majority.
Yes, that's right, yeah. And so, because you can't... If you wrote the Constitution such as that you have the inalienable right to think freely, then you could easily go, anybody can think freely. But it's the ability to be able to say what you're thinking is the actual reflection of the fact that you can think freely.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I would support the person who supports that.
Right. But I still think, maybe you're not dancing around the question, but I still think if I was to ask you who your ideal candidate was.
Yeah, but I think ideal candidate and Christian nationalism are two different things.
I'm not going to say that.
Don't
put words in my mouth.
I think in your line of argumentation you're conflating them.
I think it logically it will end up there. And that's what I'm saying, like, this is tough. Because ideally I can promise you, like I said, you can dance around it if you want, but ideally you do want a Christian leader because of their moral. It's the truth.
Okay.
You and I believe it's the truth.
So again, you have to, if you're going to be moral, right, you have to have a worldview that underpins that, right?
Correct.
Okay. So we both agree on that.
Yep.
No problem there. You and I both fully agree on orthodoxy and on the core tenets of the faith.
Yep.
No disagreement there. So I think Christian nationalism implies what in terms of government structure when you say a term?
I don't want to jump to that. You're jumping to the label of Christian nationalism. I'm trying to avoid that, and I'm trying to just show you that like you and I both. I don't want to claim the label Christian nationalist. I don't, because it's defined in so many different ways. But what I can tell you.
Okay, but how would you define where this leads to? Because that's what the part you're
what's
implying.
What's the end look like?
Yeah.
Like the ideal government structure with the ideal leader. This is a hard thing to do.
Right.
And this is why it's an open-handed issue for me.
Yeah.
But ideally, what I would desire
Yeah.
would be an orthodox, conservative theologically, right, believer.
Yep.
That's moral system was rooted in the worldview of the scriptures.
Okay.
Right? Because that brings the most freedom to people. People are going to flourish the best under the laws of God.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. So when you say laws of God,
yeah,
are you just saying the Ten Commandments, or
no?
What's the scope of that for you?
So what are the three laws or whatever, the civil law, the ceremonial law, and the moral law?
Yep.
So the moral law,
yep,
right, would be like the scope
yep.
of the moral system that I believe our country would best flourish under. And I know that we both would agree with that.
Yeah, I don't think that there's pushback there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that would be our legal system. Now, that doesn't mean, though, because also in our faith, here's the other thing.
But then what about the civil law? Because you meant moral, ceremonial, civil.
Yep.
So I guess for me, when I hear Christian nationalism,
yep.
it's not just the moral, but it's also the civil that gets wrapped into that. I think we can all agree that the ceremonial is inherently out because there's no temple.
Yep.
So that leaves the moral and the civil. And the civil I wrestle with because I think the civil, as presented in the Mosaic Law, is largely based in a functional law code that the Lord gave to the people of Israel.
In a specific time.
For the ancient Near East.
I think that the Christian nationalists that are writing the books today would say the same thing.
Okay.
So that's actually, they would say the same thing.
Yeah.
That was specific to Israel at that time.
Yep.
The moral law, though,
yep,
would become our back. And honestly, dude, like, when our country flourished the most, that's kind of what it was.
Okay. Yeah.
Would you disagree? I mean, the Constitution, again, is very much written on that backbone.
Right. So what would you do with, so there are consequences tied to the moral law.
Yeah.
Would you keep the same consequences? Because I think that's an important part of this conversation.
No, I think they need to be interpreted through the lens of the scriptures in the sense that, like, number one, there's no compulsion in Christianity. Right?
Okay.
And I say that to say that, like, being a Christian nation would not mean everyone needs to be Christian.
Agreed. Yeah.
But it does mean that, hey, you kill people, you might get the death penalty.
Right.
Right?
Sure.
Like,
I'm not opposed to capital punishment.
Right.
Yeah. I think the question is as to what extent you utilize capital punishment, or how would you treat adultery and things like that.
Yeah.
So
those are great questions that I have definitely not fleshed out.
Okay.
I mean, what do you think?
Oh, yeah. I don't really spend time thinking about being a Christian in terms of Christian nationalism has been defined from my standpoint. I don't see that.
You're a little caught up on the label, and I'm telling you, there's so many different variations to this. But I do think that you would desire a Christian nation, because to desire anything else is to desire something less moral, more suffering, more hurt for more people. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
You don't want to be tied to the post-millennial theonomy, theocracy.
Christian dominionism would be something I would oppose straight away. I don't think Christians should be arming themselves in preparation to overthrow the government.
Right.
So I'd be against.
Not at any point?
Do I think Christians, for the sake of Christ, should kill people to take over the government?
Tyrannical government.
I think for the
inflicting suffering on people.
I think that a revolution for the sake of the best for the government could be considered in a hypothetical situation. I think to say that what Jesus wants me to do is to go shoot the president, I think that would be a hard place to get to.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, right.
But I think in terms of Christian dominionism,
was America wrong in its founding when it went to war against, Britain?
No, I don't have any problem with the revolution. But again,
that's a similar, right? Like that would be.
Well, I think Christian dominionism, what they're seeking to do now is different than what the revolution was. Like that was to seek to establish our government, to establish our country, right? So, no taxation without representation, right? Like that's the cry.
Right, but yeah, I mean, I don't see much difference in that. I think that like that very well could happen. Like if you end up in a country, I mean, where we're trending now, I'm not saying it's happening anytime soon.
Sure.
Would I be surprised 200 years from now, 50 years from now?
Yeah.
It gets so bad, so tyrannical, suppressed freedom of speech. They take your arms away, like it causes some kind of war. That I would be, man, I may sound like a crazy person saying this, but could you support it from a Christian perspective to bear arms against God?
Yeah. I don't have a problem. Like I don't have a problem with Bonhoeffer seeking to try to kill Hitler. Like I'm not a pacifist, so I don't have a problem with that. I think that the idea that the church should seek to become the ruling political force in the world through violence, that's where I would be.
But that's kind of what we just said.
No, I think that is two different things. Yeah, I think.
Then what? Give me an example of what you're talking about.
Well, so I mean, I don't think that the church is supposed to take on the role of government. Like I don't think there should be a head in the church who is both the ruler of the church and the ruler of the government. I think that's Jesus' spot. I don't think a human being should be in that position.
But yet, I mean,
because Bonhoeffer wasn't seeking to kill Hitler in order to become the head of the German government. He was seeking to end the suffering of the people.
Yeah,
right? So those are two different.
Just because there's not a Christian there to fight, to bear arms. Yeah, I would completely agree.
There's the intention, the motivation for it is different.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what
I would agree.
Yeah. It's a fun conversation.
Yeah, it's more fun than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, good.
But it's
because I ate.
It helps. You ate.
Yeah, it helps. I didn't come in hangry.
Dude, I've actually read quite a bit on this, but it's still a little bit confusing. You know, you've got R. Scott, what's his name, runs Heidel blog. Anyway, he's big R2K guy, Reformed 2K theology, right? Two kingdom theology. You've got Van Til, you've got Kuyper, right, with his dominion type. That's you've got all these different theories.
Yep.
You've got historical, Calvin's political theology. You've got the Baptists coming in with their, you know what I'm saying? There's so many different views here. I think it's very difficult.
Well, and I am Baptistic, right?
Yeah.
So, and one of the core tenets of being Baptist is the separation of church and state.
Right.
Like that is a core tenet of being Baptist.
I mean, William Carey had a pretty big influence on Jefferson. I remember learning about that when I was in my tour.
Yeah. And I'm totally in favor of Christians having a lot of influence in the world. So the ministry that I'm part of, Life in Messiah, our founder, William Blackstone, one of the things that he did was he created the Blackstone Memorial, which every significant major political player in the United States signed, from Rockefeller through sitting Democrats, and it was all to support the founding of a Jewish state in Israel. And actually, before even the Zionist movement with Theodore Herschel, who's considered the father of modern Zionism, this guy did all of that. And his writing and how to handle such a situation is actually the major influence in what was the precursor to the United Nations?
Bro, I'm going to have to pause. I'm going to pee my pants. I'll edit this out.
Taking a bathroom break.
I literally am going to pee my pants. I drank too much water before I ate. Where were we?
So League of Nations. So he was influential with his writings on the founding of the League of Nations. Blackstone was, along with the creation of the CMA, Christian Missionary Alliance. Yeah. And so I'm all for Christians to be involved in influencing these matters, for Christians to run for public office. I think this is crucial. I think the motivation is what's the end goal. And so if the end goal is to force Christianity upon people through force, I think that's wrong.
Is the end goal to disciple the nations?
I think the end goal is to make disciples.
Okay, so let me ask a couple more probing questions then. What is the best context for people to do that?
Well, what we've discovered is, and I make a case for this, is that because we have an open market system that values philanthropy, then that has allowed for the most good to be done. That multiple things have happened simultaneously through our system, that as people are allowed to earn, that brings the standard of living up, right? So even though we have billionaires in our system, it allows for even the poorest to live in better conditions.
Yeah.
So I think that's good.
Yeah.
And then it's allowed for people to take those resources and gift them into other areas of the world and lift people out of poverty.
Yeah.
So I think that's good. So in the Gospels, I mean, on average, and this is an old statistic, so I'm not sure currently what it is. It's maybe 13 years old, but approximately 3,000 people come to faith every single day. So that's Pentecost happening every single day globally, right? And I think that Christianity, God has no boundaries in terms of what type of setting it needs to be for Christianity to spread, but the gospel does need to be present, and the gospel is present in open countries and in closed countries, right?
Yep.
And so
this does end up being more of a eschatological, right?
Well,
debate more than anything. Because,
there's no way to get away from that piece of it. Yeah,
I mean, the Christian nationalists are definitely on. We're going to disciple the nations,
right. And I think that's where the responsibility is to make disciples of all nations.
Yeah,
and you do that through teaching them to obey everything Jesus commanded.
Yeah.
And teaching someone to obey what Jesus commanded
church function
is different
than
a government forcing someone to obey what Jesus commanded.
But again, freedom of religion, freedom to worship who you want. Those are Christian principles. I mean, there's no compulsion in Christianity. You cannot interpret the New Testament scriptures and say that you can come away with a government that forces faith on people.
Yeah, and that statement I 100% agree with. Right. I just think in the attempts we've seen at
so the question is
creating a nation that has to be a Christian makes it a compulsion,
because we've used Mosaic principles, right, to try to create governments. And I think I'd be curious to know if we could create a better system that was Christian, right? Like, it's got to be possible. I'm not the guy. I'm saying,
I mean, maybe it is, and if the Lord tarries. So I just know that what we've had has created opportunities for immense amount of good. And this, in terms of systems, in terms of capitalism, no system has a built-in ethic, right? So socialism and communism, which are cousins, and capitalism, there's not a built-in ethic, right? And so with capitalism, it is true that you can do an immense amount of evil,
right?
But it also allows for the most good to be done, where...
Well, I mean, there are built-in ethics. I mean, built-in ethics of capitalism is free market.
In terms in terms of morality, it's not a built-in morality to it, right? Like it is on the individual own morality that's going to dictate if it's leveraged for evil or for good. But within systems like socialism and communism, again, there's not a built-in morality.
Yeah.
And what we see consistently is that there's not as much opportunity to do good.
Yeah.
And there's lots of opportunity for evil people to exploit it.
Yeah.
So
going back to the same question, though, it simplifies it for me. Call it whatever label you want.
yeah.
You and I both would agree that the ideal leader for you and I would be some type of Christian, as Christian principles, that laws were foundationally built on the Bible, on which our Constitution largely was.
Yeah, do I want someone with a biblical worldview? If that's the question. The answer is yes.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And so, I mean, call that what you want,
Right.
but where people flourish the most is under that kind of leadership, that kind of system, those kind of governing rules. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So whatever
I think
that's called,
Yeah.
call it what you want. The Christian nation does work, right? But you're thinking what we've done in the past, historically, you're thinking post-millennial. I'm saying whatever you want to call that thing, that is what we desire, because I think most people flourish under that system.
Right. So, and my caution is that the criticisms that the church has heaped upon itself is not completely unwarranted.
Yeah.
With the number of people who have claimed to be godly and have abused those that have been under their care.
Mm.
And so to just say this solves it makes me go, that's not a very compelling argument.
Yeah. Yep. So I actually went to a 2-day seminar by a guy named Dr. Glenn Sunshine, and
That's his last
that's
name?
a pretty cool name. And older guy, brilliant mind, and he actually went through church history and all of the different attempts at blending somehow. How does this church and state thing function?
Yeah.
And it's funny because I wish I could articulate what his ending goal was of like what the best system is.
Yeah.
But he had some kind of like hierarchical structure of like a king with like some kind of democratic underneath him to keep him in check. I forget exactly how it was.
Yeah.
But that's the age-old question. Like, what does the actual perfect system look like? Because saying that we're actually a democracy is not true.
Oh, we're a republic, right?
Right.
Yeah. And
But it completely all messed up now. Our judicial system has way too much power. There's all kinds of issues in our republic.
right, well, because the branch of the Senate and the House is supposed to create laws, but because of the way that the judicial branch interpret laws, they end up creating laws.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's
a
a mess.
The way the executive branch can use executive orders
Yep.
also intercedes or impedes these things.
Yeah.
So I think, and it's the same thing that Israel's going through right now.
Yeah.
You know, Israel's the only country that was founded out of World War II that remained a democracy. Isn't that interesting?
How does their structure work? So they have the president. Is that what they call him?
So they have a president who's actually a figurehead, and then they have a prime minister who functions in similar fashion as our executive branch. But then they have more of a parliament, which would be more closer to Britain's system, and so they have more of a plurality of parties. So they have like 24 or 27 different parties.
Oh, okay.
And then in order for the prime minister to gain that seat, they have to have 60 votes within their parliament. So it's always a coalition of multiple parties in order for
You think
that
it's a good
to occur.
system?
I think that it's an average system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Better than American Republic or no?
No, I don't think so. I think I would prefer.
You still think the American Republic's the best system?
I think it's globally as it exists today through human history. I think it's the best system.
What about if Kamala gets elected?
So-
what about 4 years from now?
Yeah. Well, and this is where I think this is where I think we've been trending towards a democracy, and we've been losing our status to the republic. And this is where I think doing away with the electoral college would be so problematic. And we've been on this trajectory since the Civil War is how big is the federal government versus how big is the state government? Which one leads? And I think in the designing of the Constitution, the federal government was just big enough to hold the republic together, and that the states really had autonomy. And that's almost completely flipped, especially since World War II and a lot of things FDR instituted,
Yeah.
where the federal government has become very bloated, and the individual state governments are almost neutered.
Did you see that thing with? Did you watch the Rogan podcast with Elon?
No, not yet.
Yesterday's talking about like the amount of illegal immigrants that are coming into swing states.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And them fast tracking them, and literally Elon's prediction. Which, by the way, I understand. Like, the dude gets stuff right a lot. Makes me a little nervous.
Yeah.
He's literally saying if Kamala gets elected, with the amount of illegals that are in swing states, that's no longer going to be a democracy. It's going to be, it's going to be all blue states.
Right.
I'm curious to see what this world looks like in 8 years.
Yeah, and I think that, so I think there's an assumption there, which is all illegals are going to vote blue.
Well, they do historically. Not all of them. A large percentage of them do historically. Because what they care about the most, he talks about this, what they care about the most is getting their family into the country and the benefits they're going to receive.
Yeah. And I think that as the parties have differed, I think Latinos, which is the primary audience that we're talking about in terms of illegals, I think we all agree on that.
Yep, Haitians,
is that, and Haitians we've been flying in, which is wild, right?
Two swing states.
Yeah, like flying them in. Yeah. So that's almost a whole different thing than the border crisis. That's a different issue. Is that the more the left leans on things like political or gender ideology and stuff like that, I think the quicker they lose the durations of their votes, right? Yeah. And
I look for that whole thing to lose trend. It kind of already has.
Yeah, I mean, DEI initiatives are dying.
It's all dying.
And, yeah.
You know what I mean?
So
everybody's racist all the time is dying. I mean, like, a lot of this stuff feels like it's going away.
Ooh, I wonder if we could get away with that. I think it'd be fun to do a reaction video where we're watching Am I a Woman and Am I a Racist by Matt Walsh.
Yes.
I think that would be a fun.
My daughter and I went in the theater.
Did you go?
Oh, my gosh.
I would love to do
Am I a Racist in the theater we were dying.
Yeah, dying. Yeah, it's hilarious. I mean, it's incredibly sad, but it is hilarious in terms of how well he can keep a straight face. Probably should not touch on leadership in the church for the sake of
for the sake of time. We probably have to.
Yeah,
we did.
Nice, bro.
For a lot of content today.
Yeah, way to go.
Well, dude, I hope we're still alive in the morning after the results tonight.
It's so funny that by the time the post, this is all going to be.
Oh yeah.
I mean, maybe it's going to be decided. Maybe it's all going to be fought out in the court battle, like some people are predicting.
We'll find out.
Yeah. How are you going to spend the election night?
Watching my TV as the votes roll in.
Are you?
Oh, yeah, I do. I get amped up for it. I want to see.
You're just going to watch it in real time?
Yeah. I know. It's a dread.
Yeah. It's like watching someone wrap your Christmas present, and then you have to wait to unwrap it.
I know. It stinks. But someone said that if we know Pennsylvania early, it could be a very big indicator, and we will know that early. So.
Yeah, because it was Iowa and then South Carolina, and then what comes after?
No idea. I don't know the order. I just saw a tweet that said Pennsylvania will be in early, and that's a huge indicator. So.
And Fetterman, man, he's an interesting guy.
That was a boring podcast. Unimpressed with that guy. Thanks for listening, everyone. Like, subscribe, share. Appreciate you.
Until next time.